419 Mindsets of a Scammer. The purpose of this project is to educate people about the numerous methods scammers, fraudsters uses upon their victims, and also to create public awareness about the preventive measures against scams. What is Cheque scam? A cheque scam, also known as a counterfeit cheque scam, is a type of fraudulent activity in which scammers send individuals or businesses counterfeit checks with the intention of tricking them into believing the checks are legitimate. The scam typically involves a scenario where the victim receives a check that appears to be genuine and is often for a substantial amount of money. The victim is then instructed to deposit the check into their bank account and is told to wire a portion of the funds back to the scammer or a third party. Here's how the scam generally works. Receiving the check. The victim receives a check, often accompanied by a convincing explanation, such as winning a prize, being hired for a job, or as payment for an item they are selling online. Depositing the check. The victim deposits the check into their bank account. Since banks are required to make funds available quickly, the victim may see the funds credited to their account within a few days. Sending money. The scammer then urges the victim to send a portion of the funds, usually by wire transfer or some other untraceable method, claiming it's required for various reasons such as taxes, fees, or processing costs. Check bounces. After a few days or weeks, the bank discovers that the deposited check is fake or fraudulent. The victim's bank then deducts the full amount of the check from the victim's account, leaving them responsible for the lost money. Loss for the victim. The victim not only loses the money they wired to the scammer but also any other fees associated with the bounced check. Types of cheque scam. There are various types of cheque scams that scammers use to deceive individuals and businesses. Here are some common types of cheque scams. Counterfeit cheque scams. These scams involve scammers creating counterfeit checks that appear legitimate but are entirely fake. They might send these checks to victims as payment for goods, services, or as part of a fraudulent scheme. Victims deposit the checks, only to find out later that they are counterfeit. Overpayment scams. In this scam, a scammer sends a check for more than the agreed-upon amount for a product or service and asks the victim to deposit it and return the excess amount. The scammer's check is counterfeit, and the victim ends up losing money after the bank realizes the check is fake. Prize or lottery scams. Victims receive a check in the mail claiming that they've won a prize or lottery. To claim the prize, they are instructed to deposit the check and send a portion of the funds to cover taxes or fees. The check bounces, and the victim is left with a financial loss. Online sales scams. Scammers pose as buyers for items listed online, e.g., on auction sites or classified ads. They send a fake check for the purchase price along with instructions for the victim to send the item and the excess money back. The check is fake, and the victim loses both the item and the money. Employment scams. Scammers may pose as employers, offering work-from-home jobs. They send the victim a check, supposedly for work or supplies. The victim is asked to deposit the check and send a portion of the funds to a third party or purchase equipment. The check is fake, and the victim loses money. Rental scams. In rental scams, fraudsters pose as potential tenants, send a check for rent and a security deposit, often overpaying, and then ask the landlord to refund the excess. The check bounces, and the landlord loses money. Secret shopper scams. Victims receive a check and instructions to become a secret shopper, buying items and evaluating stores. They are instructed to deposit the check and wire part of the funds to the scammer. The check is fraudulent, and the victim is left with a loss. Sweetheart scams. In romance scams, scammers build online relationships with victims and then claim to be in financial distress. They send a fake check for the victim to deposit, requesting the victim to send money to help them. The check bounces, and the victim loses money. Charity scams. Scammers may pose as representatives of charities, sending fake checks to individuals and asking them to deposit the checks and send a portion to the charity. The checks are counterfeit, and the money goes to the scammer. Investment scams. Scammers may lure victims into investment schemes promising high returns. They send fake investment returns or dividends in the form of checks. The victims deposit the checks, but they are counterfeit. How to avoid being a victim of check scam. To avoid becoming a victim of a fake check scam, here are some essential tips and practices to follow. Be skeptical. Approach any unexpected offers or opportunities involving checks with skepticism. Scammers often use enticing offers to lure victims into their schemes. Verify the source. Before depositing any check, thoroughly research the company or individual that sent it. Look for official websites, contact information, and reviews. Legitimate organizations will have a traceable online presence. Don't rush. Scammers often create a sense of urgency to pressure you into acting quickly. Take your time to verify the legitimacy of the offer before taking any action. Contact the issuer. If you receive a check from an organization or individual you're unfamiliar with, contact them directly using official contact information to verify the check's authenticity. Avoid wire transfers. Be cautious if you're asked to wire money to someone you don't know. Scammers often request wire transfers because they are difficult to trace and undo. Wait for funds to clear. Even if your bank makes funds available to you after depositing a check, it doesn't necessarily mean the check has cleared. Wait for the check to fully clear, which can take several days or even weeks, before spending or transferring any money. Check for security features. If you suspect a check might be fake, examine it closely for security features like watermarks, security threads, and holograms. Legitimate checks often have these features. Use trusted payment methods. When conducting transactions, especially online sales, use secure payment methods that provide buyer protection, such as PayPal or established e-commerce platforms. Educate yourself. Familiarize yourself with common scams and their warning signs. Being informed can help you recognize potential scams more easily. Protect personal information. Avoid sharing sensitive personal information, such as your social security number or bank account details, with anyone unless you are certain of their legitimacy. Report suspicious activity. If you suspect you've encountered a fake check scam, report it to your local law enforcement agency, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and your bank. Use common sense. If an offer seems too good to be true, it probably is. Trust your instincts and exercise caution. Conclusion. Fake check scams exploit the fact that funds from a deposited check are typically made available to the account holder before the check has fully cleared. This delay between the availability of funds and the actual clearance of the check gives scammers an opportunity to convince victims to send money before the bank realizes the check is counterfeit. To avoid falling victim to fake check scams, it's important to be cautious when dealing with unfamiliar parties, especially when they request you to send money shortly after receiving a check. Always verify the legitimacy of checks and transactions, and if something seems too good to be true, it's wise to conduct thorough research and possibly consult with your bank or local authorities before taking any action.